Hi, welcome or welcome back to Everyone Has One with Tiffany. I'm Tiffany. In today's video, I wanted to hop on a trend on TikTok that I've been wanting to stitch, but I just decided that mine needs a little bit more of a backstory. So I decided to make a YouTube video about it. So it's what's a coincidence you think of all the time, or you think about all the time. So you need a little bit of background story for this. So for those of you who don't know, my mom's ex-husband, she met him after I was born. I grew up a very big part of my life, is my young years, believing that he was my biological father. And part of those many, many years when I was about 4, so born in Chicago, my mom's from Chicago, and her and her ex-husband moved our family of 5 then. My mom had 2 kids with her ex-husband at that time. Moved us to Las Vegas, and we lived there for about 4-ish years. And so that's the backstory. And during that time, things were not great. My mom's ex-husband was like a musician, and he was, whatever, jazz musician, and he played in like nightclubs and the casinos and, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But what matters in this story is that for 4 years we lived in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And during those 4 years, we moved almost every single year, if not more often. We lived in one or two different apartments, and then we lived in a few houses. I can think of three different houses that we lived in. One of the houses might have been an apartment. I actually think one of the houses was an apartment. So it was 2 apartments and 3 houses, I believe, that we lived in when we lived in Las Vegas. And in one of the apartments we lived in, across the courtyard, so it's like the 2 square or rectangle apartments. So across the courtyard and on the 2nd floor, almost directly across from us, was a young man who seemed like he was an adult to me. I was probably about 5 or 6, and he was 13. He was a really nice kid. He was like 12 or 13. Just a really nice kid, like one of the nicest kids like in the area. And he was from England. He was born in England. His mom was English, but his dad was American, and he was living with his dad for whatever reason. I'm not, I was like 5 or 6. I don't know the whole backstory. So anyway, he was just so kind to me. Like, I was a little kid, my mom would work days a lot of the time, and my mom's ex-husband would work nights so that they didn't necessarily have to spend a lot of money on babysitters, because there were 3 kids that would need to be babysat. So, if my mom's ex-husband worked nights, that means he slept a lot during the day. So I would be out, running around the neighborhood as a little kid, kind of by myself sometimes. So this kid across the way, he kind of kept an eye on me. And he was just the kindest kid, for a teenager, for his age. He was just so nice to me. And there were a lot of older kids who were not very kind to me, because I was a little kid always butting into everybody's business. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know any, I was not from here. This is one of the first places that we lived there. So all that to say, we move away from him. And, we don't see him for a while because, like I said, we moved almost every year, if not more often, while we were there. At one point, things happened, and I can talk about that in another video, but my siblings and I end up in basically in DCFS or CPS custody. And we're there for an amount of time when my mom and her ex-husband get their crap together so that they can get us back. And I remember, it was not a good time. it was not a good time. But one of the first things, there's only I was very young, and there's a handful of things that I remember vividly, but one of the things I remember is that this young man was there. And I'll tell you what, like, even thinking about it right now, I'm feeling the wetness behind my eyes, because I was a little bit older than my siblings, so we were kind of we were separated. They had the kids kind of like an age group, and I was a school age child and they weren't. So the school age children had to go to school in like this one room school, and they kind of gave us work to do or whatever. But so I was separated from my my brothers and my sister, because by then my baby brother born? I can't. Yes. No? Right this second, I can't remember. If you ask me another time, I would remember. But I think he was born. Or maybe my mom was pregnant with him. Anyway, so, but this young man was there. And this young man's name was Christopher. And God knows if I could find him, I would be over the moon. He lived in Las Vegas. Like I said, he was 13 when I was 5 or 6. And his mom was from the UK. His dad was American. And his dad was not a nice guy. But he was an amazing human being, and probably still is, would be my guess. Because you can't be that cool at 13 and not still be a good person, I think. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, but his name was Christopher. And, gosh, I was trying to learn how to ride a bike. And he souped up my bike for me, put a speedometer on it. Just it was a Panther. It was just the coolest bike. And he did all that on his own with his own money, and really made my bike cool. And I loved that bike. I had it for years. And I remember when I was, brought it back to Chicago and was able to ride it. It was just, it doesn't matter. It was just really cool. But Christopher was just so he was a little, he was an angel to me. He was there, and I remember eating Cheerios and crying and missing my mom and seeing him and just being so glad that he was there and having a familiar face. And I remember him walking with me to the school and, pushing the sugar across the table so I could put it on my Cheerios, and, just a big brother that wasn't, that wasn't related. So that's the first coincidence. Wait, hang on. So was my neighbor, moved away, saw him again, right? Exactly when I needed him. And then we'll put that on pause. Like I've shared in many videos, I had my first child at 16. A month and a half before my 17th birthday. And I had all these names picked out for her, and we weren't sure if it was a boy or a girl, but I had, she was a she, so, or she is a she, and I had all these names picked out, and just a myriad of names, and I was hell-bent on naming her Ashlyn something that I can't remember, but it was Ashlyn. And I was like, yep, that's going to be my kid's name, no ifs, ands, or buts, whatever. She's born, and I had another name kind of floating in my head, but I'm like, nope, I've decided this is what it is. And she's born, and I look at her, and I name her Alexis. And, which fits her perfectly. And it was when I saw her, I'm like, her name is Alexis, right? And, Alexis, which is a derivative of Alexander, or Alexandra. So, Alexis. So hold that. So fast forward to me having my son. My kids are almost exactly 4 years apart, 3 years and 10 months or something like that. They're almost 4 years apart. So, again, this time I wasn't going to, pick a name, but I had a list of names, and one of them was, I wanted him to have a initial nickname. It was JD. I wanted Josiah Darren. Darren's my husband's name. So I wanted JD, and I thought it was so cute or whatever. And I go and I have this kid and I end up naming him Christopher. And I have no idea why I ended up with Christopher. And of course, Christopher is a great name. And instead of giving him his father's first name as his middle name, I gave him the middle name, where it was like of his father's middle name and then his father's first name and my great grandfather's name. And so it was like, it ended up being a family name. So fast forward again, and actually we should pause. I'm going to go back to about 3 years before I have my daughter. 3-4 years before I have my daughter, I find out that my mom's ex-husband is not my biological father. Something that from a young age I knew, but I was never told. And one day I was told in a very dysfunctional way. And I find this out and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I ask my mom, like, can I find this guy? Like, what's going on? And, it doesn't matter. I'm not even going to get into that. But anyway, so that's put on hold. And what ends up happening is, finally I'm like, F all this. I'm going to start looking for this guy. And this is many, many moons later. And I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I just want to know, I want to know who this man is, right? So I start doing the research, and that's a video for another time. That's quite the story. But it turns out that my biological father's last name is Alexander. And it's just a crazy coincidence that, like, I ended up naming my daughter Alexis when that was not a name that I would have picked, in it being like a female derivative of Alexander. And that without even realizing it, I named my son Christopher. And I realized this coincidence when I was doing just kind of like a personal inventory. And I was, you have to like write your story, and so like they give you like an outline and you go through, and you start thinking, and I was like, wow, like I didn't realize then what an impact Christopher had in my life. And I end up naming my son Christopher without even like just completely out of the blue. Like I said, I had a completely different name picked out for him. And then with my daughter Alexis, again, she was supposed to be Ashlyn. Like that was, and I forget what the middle name was. It doesn't even matter. But I ended up giving her the name Alexis because she did not look like an Ashlyn. She totally looks like an Alexis. And for it to be like this other connection that I didn't even know, like I didn't find that out until my daughter was an adult, that there was like that weird connection to the Alexander type thing. But my life has just been these like big circles, so many different coincidences, so many different situations where it's like, wait, what? Like how? Maybe in another video I'll tell you how I finally after 40 years or whatever it is, saw a picture of my biological father and learned about the other siblings that I have all over the country, and how that went. But for now, I think that's it. But like I said, like it needed more than the whatever 60 seconds or a couple minutes that you get on a TikTok video, and it just, for me, again, like I said, like not until I had to do like that inventory did I realize like how many of these weird coincidences there are in my life. And honestly, like how many times like I wasn't aware, but God was there. Like God was in it somehow. And for someone who is like me, who doesn't have a good grasp on all of their family history, and I don't have that, to have like these little little pieces that kind of are my family history, right? And it's going to be a really cool story that maybe I didn't get a cool story for, you know, how I was named or how I came about, or, you know, somebody who helped, you know, but I have a really cool story to tell my kids. So, and my son is an amazing young man, and he's kind, and, you know, I didn't even realize, but he does his namesake very proud. He I think, English Christopher, UK Christopher would be proud of, to share a name with my son. And I just think that my daughter, she's an amazing woman, and, you know, it's such a special thing that, like, again, God kind of brought me back to that place of, like, where, for when I had my daughter, this video's gotten way too long, but when I had my daughter, that was one thing that I was kind of like, now I'll have someone who, like, is truly a part of me, not like in a selfish way, but, you know, like, I love my siblings, but, like, they're my half sibling. That does, like, honestly, that doesn't matter, but, like, in my, like, 16-year-old self, knowing that I, like, shared DNA and history with another human being, and, you know, other than my siblings, right? Like, that I had something with someone else was really important to me, because I was very much into, like, learning about who I was and having, like, a history. And now I had this child who, like, I was going to know everything, and she was going to get to know everything, and I was going to be able to teach her things, and there weren't going to be these weird secrets. And, you know, she has a really great dad. Like, my husband's a great dad, you know, even as our children are adults, he's still a really good dad, where, like, I didn't have any of that. And I was so glad that I was able to give that to her. And in all that, like, longing for, like, a connection to where I came from, to know that, like, it somehow, you know, and, like, I could say it's a God thing, or it's a me thing, or it was just a coincidence, or whatever you want to call it. Like, she ended up with this name that has a link to who I am. And I think I really found who I was as a person when I had her. Like, when I had my daughter is when I started figuring things out, right? Like, who I am as a person, who I need to be, what I need to do. Like, all those things started happening when I had her, at the young age of 16. So, wow, this video is, you know, cranking up on time, but that's the weird coincidence that I think about all the time, is how things always end up in this weird circle for me, even if it's like an ellipse or whatever, but it always ends up coming back around. There's many more, and if you would like to hear the story of how I found my biological father, leave it in the comments, and maybe I'll tell you. Actually, I will tell you. If you leave it in the comments, I will tell you. But yeah, that's it for today. This is where my microphone is. That's it for today. I hope you enjoy your day, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks. It's not working. This is why I have to tell you I'm stopping.